Good morning. I say morning because it is my Saturday morning and I am recording this earlier than normal because next week I am going to be in Greece and I do not want to have any obligations while I'm in Greece. However, I am going to take a little remote mic and I also don't want to pack my podcasting gear, but I am going to take a little mic and I might broadcast from there just because I might do a show from there just because I think the abundance of being in the country, but I don't want to commit to that. So I'm doing one that will be recorded in advance and published next week. And I had to move out of I was going to do this in just audio. I normally do video and audio, and I don't have my makeup on. I have my glasses on. I don't have my normal podcast face on. And the person who's doing the drywall in our basement is we're changing up and putting a real wall behind me instead of fake wall in my podcasting studio, aka my furnace room. But that work is underway. So I thought, well, I'll just get it in quick before he comes back because he's doing part two. And I will do that and get it in. And then I went down there and I was like, I'll take all the equipment up to my home office, which is not where I normally do it because my dog is here and he normally takes a morning nap. He gets a little antsy in the afternoon with squeaky balls and toys and stuff. So he is down there gnawing. And he might start making noise. That's not me. Okay. So today's episode is about the abundance of travel because I love to travel and I thought, why not do while I'm thinking about travel and while I'm getting ready to go on travel, why not have a travel episode? Because for me, traveling has always been such a big deal. It's always been something that I have loved so much. And when it got taken away from me pretty much with the pandemic, and in fact, the year 2019, the year before the pandemic, I traveled probably more in 1 year than I've ever traveled. I traveled 8 times on an airplane, going to conferences. And so then like doing it so much and then having it like pulled out from under my feet, it was like, oh my gosh. And I had so many things planned. I had booked 3 trips when everything hit and everything was shut down. So the nice part is that I got credit for all that. So I'm using that this year now. So in fact, my whole trip, my airfare to Greece is something that I paid for a year and a half ago. That was just a credit that I needed to use before the end of the year. So it makes it a little bit easier to go to Greece, less expensive. And Greece has been on my vision board. And this came up because I don't know if you heard the story, but I had Natanya Stamboli on probably back in June and on my podcast. And she is a yoga teacher. And we were talking about her yoga. She went offline she was offline and she went online during the pandemic because she lives in LA and everything was shut down everywhere, but particularly in LA, for the fitness studios, they were just like, couldn't even hold anything. And I mean, I remember seeing something on TV where, they arrested somebody that had a fitness studio. So it was pretty shut down. And so she has moved her yoga practice online and went from making $3,000 a month because yoga teachers, and she had her own business. So she had a studio and she paid teachers to teach. So she not only taught, but she was also a business owner, but she was not making a lot of money doing that. She was just doing it because she loved it. And so she was only making like $3,000 a month. And she went online with her business during COVID in a panic, right? What can I do? What can I do? Oh, let me just go online. Let me figure this thing out. And she's on her way to making $1 million and like close to $1 million. I think she's made like $700,000. And so we had this conversation about her business and how she pivoted to online. And I don't think this conversation, it might've been on while we were recording, but I talked to my guests before and after we record, and I found out she was doing a retreat. She said, I do retreats too. And I was like, oh, where do you go? And she goes, well, my next one's in Greece. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is such a sign because, I have a Greece and a retreat on my vision board. And I've had them on my vision board for a year and a half. since I started that put that together in January of 20 I guess it was 2019, right? And so yeah, so I was like, send me the information. Send me, I'm like interested. And it's more of an adventure retreat than a like do nothing retreat. So I'm also excited about that because I love adventure, because to me travel is all about adventure. And I love going and seeing, I mean, I love traveling around my country, America, and there's a lot of places that I haven't seen in America, one being the Grand Canyon. So that's something on my bucket list. But, traveling internationally has, for me, I love seeing new cultures. I love going to places where I don't speak the language. And it's just, to me, that there's no better learning than immersive learning. And so I thought today it would be all about what travel has brought me and the abundance that it brings me, and the abundance I get when I think about the travels that I've done, the memories. And I remember my ex-husband one time saying, because he was very much into materialism and things, buying things, and I was into experiences. And that was one thing that we had very different kind of beliefs and desires on. However, I would plan these trips and he would go along with it, fortunately. So, I mean, he was a good guy essentially, but I remember one time he said to me, he said, well, that's a waste of money. Going on a trip is a waste of money. And I thought, that to me is the best money you can spend, because it's a memory, it's an experience. And I've met people, and I'm going to go down some of like the best and most amazing places I've been. And so as you listen to this episode, I would love for you to think about like where you would like to go next. Like put it on your vision board. If you have a bucket list, write it on your bucket list. And then think about the experiences that you've had that you really treasure. And I'll talk about some of them, so many of them. I'm such a fortunate person that I've been able to do this. But one of the things that actually started me on, I think, this travel bug is my grandparents. My mother's parents, and he was a general, and she was a military wife, and they traveled a lot because he was a general, and that's what you do in the Army, right? And so they insisted on giving their grandchildren, upon high school graduation, the gift of a trip to Europe. And I was the second oldest grandchild. So my sister went before me. So she was the first one to get it. And I feel sorry for her because her trip was going with my grandparents to England. So I think they went for like 2 weeks. And, she got along really good with my grandparents, but I can't imagine, like, my trip was so different than hers, and I'm sure so much more fun. So anyways, when it was my turn to graduate, or to get the present, and I graduated early, I was 17. And I said, can you just give me the money? I would much rather just have whatever it was, $1,000 at the time. And fortunately, they would not. It was like a trip or nothing. And that to me was a really better gift of like insistence that, this is what you're getting, or else, it's your choice, this or nothing. And so I was like, okay, all right, I'm not ready. I don't know what was going through my mind or what I decided to do differently. I mean, I think I just was like, can I put it on hold? So what happened is, a year later, right after I finished, so the fall of the year after I graduated from high school, I didn't go to college because my boyfriend at the time and I had this plan that we were going to go to college together, and his parents blew that up. And so I was kind of stuck at home, and I was like, oh my God, I was working at McDonald's, and it was not a fun semester. All my friends went off to college and were having fun. So I applied and I started college in January. So I was like a semester behind everybody. So at the end of that first semester, or sometime during that semester, I said to my grandparents, okay, I'll go this summer, I'll go to Europe. So let's go. So since I was going to go by myself, we found a kind of a school sponsored trip, and it was 2 weeks, 8 cities, 2 women chaperones, and kids from different high schools. So I was like a year, well, I was really kind of their age, because like I said, I graduated, although they weren't all seniors, some were younger, but yeah, so maybe I was a little bit on the older side from them, but they were still kind of peers and fun. But they didn't I didn't know them. I didn't know a soul. And I think this goes back and speaks to my love for adventure and meeting new people. And so I wasn't scared at all. And so I met these people in an airport and I hopped on a plane and the adventure began. And so for me, that experience, I went to, let's see, we covered a lot of stuff. We went to England, we went to France. We started in England, ended in France. We also went to Belgium, we went to Switzerland, we went to Germany. I got to walk up the ski jump of and this is in the summer, so there was no snow, but in Innsbruck, they had the 76 Olympics. So this was in 77. So I got to walk up the ski jump. That was the ski jump in the 76 Olympics. And I remember looking down, holy crap. I mean, when you look down those ski jumps, you can't even see the ground. It like disappears. That's how steep they are. That's how steep they are. When you watch it on TV, it doesn't look so steep, but it is super steep. And so just that was experience and being in those cities, and it just lit something inside of me that I want to come back someday. I want to do this again. This is so amazing. And so, yeah, that was kind of started it, but yet I got into the raising kids mode, didn't have a lot of money. I was married to a police officer. So we both worked, did the kind of like, rat race thing. And then, I was fortunate enough to get on with a company that was growing AOL. I talked about AOL before. And so I became the breadwinner in the family and we got some stock options. We were able to pay off our credit cards. We were really struggling young couple. And so I was like in my mid 30s, early 30s when I got the job at AOL. So that by the time I was 40, we could afford to travel and do fun things. And so I found this cruise. And one of my big desires was to take his parents and my parents on a Mediterranean cruise. And so, I remember it was right after 9/11. So we planned this amazing Mediterranean cruise. And I will tell you that we gave it to them as a Christmas present. So I remember I took a picture of the ship and folded it up and put it in a box. And we gave it to them as a Christmas gift. And they literally were in shock. They couldn't believe it. And it was the trip of a lifetime. Let me tell you, it was so much fun. And I'm so glad we did it. And I honestly think that my ex-husband during that time realized the importance of the experience and the value of the experience. And my kids at the time were I think they were 18 and 19, which were perfect ages, because you could drink when you're 18 in Europe. And they met some kids on the ship and they had a ball. In fact, one of them was a famous singer in Great Britain. He was the number one band and he was the lead singer for the number one band. And they hung out and had so much fun. In fact, we went back to London years later and he was in a Broadway play. He was in Chicago and he invited us out. My daughter found him, we were actually looking at the hotel magazine and she was flipping through it and she was like, oh, I should call him. And I think she still had his number in the phone, but of course she didn't know if the number was still active. But before she even called him, she was flipping through this magazine, what to do in London. And she saw his picture and the thing that they were playing in Chicago. So she called the theater, and the theater, it was at night because we had just gotten into our hotel room and it was at night and it was in the hotel. The theater said, oh, he's in the show. So he, can't come to the phone. And she said, oh, well, just tell him, I called, and she said her name. So he actually called her back at intermission. It was so cool. It was so cool to reconnect with people that you met in this trip of a lifetime. Right. And one of the other kids they hung out with, he was 19 years old and was with his Nana. and he became like a soap opera star, and he's in the movie Pitch Perfect, the third movie of Perfect. So it's like they remained in touch with these people, and because social media allows that, so that is just kind of a setup for kind of how my first trip really kind of made this, and I don't know if it was in me all along, and that just touched me so much going on that first trip that it was like, I want to do more of this. I want to do more of this. And so then when we went back, it was like, and so it's so funny. There was that big gap. I mean, I was 18 when I went the first time, and I was, golly, I mean, 40, I think I was 40, 41 when I went the second time. So a big gap. And the travel that I'd done in the meantime was holiday trips to the grandparents, to the beach, just little, nothing, something that most Americans do, nothing, because a lot of Americans actually don't ever get out of the country, which I would say is sad to me, because I think the more you learn about other cultures and other people and other ways of doing things. I mean, it's so interesting the way other people eat, like breakfast. I mean, it makes you appreciate what you have, because it makes you realize that you have all the things that you think in your head and you believe are so much culture based, right? So much culture, what you're used to, what you've grown up with. And so like I made a big list of the things that the places I've been. So yeah, and I have 4 things about travel that are kind of like topics. So going to new places I've never been, getting a map. Well, in the old days, you had maps. I remember when I used to go on business trips, right? So those were some trips that I went on when I was a little bit younger. But I remember one time going into Chicago and having to drive to Hammond, Indiana on a trip. And, I remember the experience. I remember also, oh my gosh, this thought just came to me. I remember I took a wrong turn, or I did something wrong. And because I was confused in my car. I was in a rent-a-car, and the woman honked at me behind me. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. And you know what she did? She waved. She waved at me. Where I'm from in Northern Virginia, outside of DC, I would get the middle finger. I mean, I have actually gotten the middle finger from somebody in DC and been chased. That is what it's like driving in a big city area. And so then I go to this like small little town, which of course I grew up in Northern Virginia, so I don't know anything about small towns. So I go to this small town, and this person honks at me, and I'm like, oh, like waiting for the middle finger, and I get this little wave. And so that's what I mean. I mean, there's cultures inside of our country, and then there's cultures outside of our country. So like getting in a car and like figuring out like on the map where to go, and then experiencing that place, to me, is so much fun. I know some people, like my sister, she would get lost very easily. She's not very good like with directions. I kind of have this instinct for directions and what's north, south, east, and west. And I know some people don't. So, and I know that can be really scary, like when you're in a place and you don't know, like, and now we have our phones, right? And if we lose our phones, heaven forbid. So that was one thing. The other thing, like I said, was seeing different cultures. The other thing was like number 3 was like being with friends and family, like that Mediterranean cruise. The value of that time we spent was like I would never, ever, that to me was like, when I think of like the top 5 things that have happened in my life, that is probably number 1, other than becoming a mom. So yeah, because that's something that it will always be a memory, will always be cherished. And I only wish we could have done it again and more times. But it was just amazing. And then the 4th thing was like just the adventure aspect, because I love going on adventures. I love trying new things like zip lining, and I've been able to swim with dolphins. So yeah, we've zip lined a couple of times. We went on this one in Jamaica, it was like a course, like going on a course. There was like 8 zip lines, and they went through the jungle, and the zip lines were different. Like there was a vertical zip line, and I remember I went with, when you get grouped together, and there was a woman, and she was behind me, and she was like crying. She was very upset. And I was like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay." I was like, thinking somebody forced her to do this, and that she was just like very scared. And she goes, "No, no, no, I actually want to do this. I want to do this. I want to get over my fear." And like, how amazing was that when she finished, that she like did it and she conquered her fear. So these little things that happen on a trip, they get ingrained in our memory, and they're there forever, and they make an impact on us, and usually a positive impact, right? So we went mountain biking. My ex-husband and I, we did this mountain biking trip in West Virginia. It was on this. Now I'm not into like doing these hardcore uphill biking. Like I talked before about like running. I like flat surfaces. I do not like hills. So yeah, so this mountain biking trip was on this flat old railroad track, which they had removed the railroad track, and it was just like gravel and dirt. And it was like 4 nights, and you biked every day. It was like 15 to 20 miles of a bike ride, and then you'd bike to a bed and breakfast, and then they would take your luggage for you, the company. And so it was like going from place, little town to little town on a bike. Beautiful scenery. We biked along the Monongahela. I don't even know really, river. So you never knew what you were going to see as you're riding your bike. The scenery. We came to a river, and it was a group of like 8 people. Didn't know these people, met these people, had so much fun, right? So we come to this river, and we stop for lunch. And then a couple of people like take their clothes off and go skinny dipping. And I'm like, not for me. So, but that was funny. I mean, it was like just this experience of experiencing these other people. Then we bike along a little bit more, and we find this little dive bar, and we all get out and we have a beer. And then, I remember one of the nights was a bed and breakfast in this beautiful, like old kind of home at like front porch, in the country, just something that I love. And they had a hot tub, and I remember sitting in the hot tub and watching the full moon in the sky. It was the night of a full moon, and just that, sitting that in my memory, I can sit there and be back there. And I remember them in the morning, of course, bed and breakfast. I love bed and breakfast. I love the bed and breakfast feel, because it's like you get it. It's very much like meeting people. It's a very much especially like I've always thought I'd like to be a B&B owner, because think of how fun that would be, meeting people, coming in and getting to talk about all these things. And so it's that kind of environment for meeting people and having really great conversations and learning about other people and where they're from and what they do. And I love that. So I remember we were sitting there at the breakfast table and getting a delicious meal, and she had handpicked the blueberries that we were having, and the blueberry pancakes. In fact, I think a couple of people on the trip, she had asked them to go pick the blueberries. So just like little things like that, and it was a great adventure, because I liked it, because it was like a workout, and then you could eat, you got exercise, and then you could eat and meet people. Yeah. We did moped bikes in Tuscany. Oh, that was an adventure. So in Tuscany, first of all, they teach you just for like 15 minutes how to ride a moped in like the equivalent of a riding corral. So when do we do this? We did this in like 2000 and I don't know, 2010, I think is when we did this. So my now husband, we did this fun adventure to Tuscany. And so we did these mopeds. And so they taught us, I don't even think they have you sign a form, here in America, you have to sign your life away. Right. And I remember we then go on a road where there's cars, and then we go on pastures, and there was probably, I don't know, want to say maybe 15 or 16 people on the tour that we were doing, and 2 people fell off their bikes, and guess who they were? My husband and me. And we both crashed, and I actually hurt my ankle a little bit, and I was really worried about it because we were going on a hiking after we finished in Tuscany. We were going on a walking adventure for like 4 to 5 days, like a walking tour in Tuscany, and I was like, I need my feet, I need my legs, but fortunately, it was just a little twist, and it was fine. But yeah, I hit some gravel and I like fell, but yeah, I think I used the wrong brake too, but silly, but it didn't matter. It didn't matter. We had fun, so much fun. And then we stopped and had lunch in this cute little town, and such fun. We also did a cooking class there. We did a cooking class. We went to this restaurant, and I made, you know what I made? I made biscotti, almond biscotti. So we all were put at different tables. My husband was at a different table. I can't remember. I think maybe he was making pasta. So and then we made a meal, and then we sat down and ate the meal. And that was super fun. We also did a cooking adventure in New Orleans. So I highly recommend that. Not only did we cook a meal, and delicious meal, and get to eat it, she gave us the recipes so we could make it at home. And she gave us a history lesson of New Orleans, and how the food in New Orleans is such a variety because so many people immigrated there from different countries. So, the French came, Africans came. So there's this all blend of just different foods because they brought the food from their culture. So interesting. Something I didn't know. And I think as we get older, we're even more interested in this stuff, because when I was younger, I was like, meh. We did just a couple of years ago, we flew in a helicopter. I've never been in a helicopter before. We flew in a helicopter to Catalina Island, and it was the idea of our friend. So we have a friend, and he also, we used to go to Aspen with him and his girlfriend, and always just big. He played rugby with my husband. And so he's an international traveler. He speaks 6 languages, great guy to know. And he's the one who got us to go on that walking tour in Tuscany. We went with him and his girlfriend, and it was so much fun. We would have never gone if they hadn't given us the idea. And I remember we were in Aspen actually, and they were talking about it, and I was like, "Oh, you're going to Italy?" And I walk in. Italy's like one of my favorite places. I've always loved it since the first time I went. And so, yeah, so the first time I went to Italy was on that cruise, on that Mediterranean cruise, and we did 3 stops in Italy. So, yeah, and one of the stops we did, which was like, oh my gosh, if you're ever in Italy, please, please, please go to Naples, because near Naples is Pompeii. Pompeii is where Mount Vesuvius is, and I didn't know anything about this. It's funny, my youngest daughter knew about it. I didn't know about it. That's like how bad I'm like 41 years old, and I've never heard of Mount Vesuvius and the big, huge volcano that killed thousands. But she knew about it because she had learned about it in history. So she was fascinated. But yeah, like that, going on that tour, oh my gosh, like the history and what happened to those people, crazy. So so we also we stopped in Sorrento. And we had a really amazing lunch, and they played Funicula for us. We just, these little things that at the time seem, oh, this is really cute, a 3-minute song, but it's etched forever as a beautiful memory. And we were able, and you go on a cruise, and it was our first cruise. I'd never been on a cruise before. And I was really worried because I get seasick. What I learned is that stay as low as you can and inside, because when the rocking is what makes you seasick. And when the higher up you are, the more the rocking will happen, and the more outside you are, you'll feel that. I have found, though, that if I get a place with a balcony, because I've been on a couple cruises since, if I get a room with a balcony, then if I can see the outside, that's also good for me. And they have things, they have patches that you can wear that I know help as well. So yeah, so that's my little tip for cruises. But we took, when you go on a cruise, you can do excursions, and we took an excursion and went to Capri. And Capri is like Rodeo Drive. If you've ever been to Beverly Hills and gone down Rodeo Drive, that's Capri. It's an island of the rich and famous. And I remember we, going into the different stores, and it was so amazing. And then there was a hotel that had a porch on it, and you could just sit there on the porch, have a drink, and watch people going along the street, the main street. So that's what we did. We got a drink and sat there, and another great memory etched. We also went to Spain with my parents. My parents had, I don't know, I think a Hyatt timeshare. So they would go all over the place and stay in these Hyatt hotels, essentially, but hotels designed to be more like long-term stays. And so they wanted us to go to Spain with them. So this is my ex-husband and I. So we went to Spain with them, and that was an adventure. And we would do these little day trips to different places. We went to, Ronda. Ronda is a city in Spain where I think it was the first place they did bull riding. And I think they still, not bull riding, bull fighting. And I think they still do like one a year, but they had a little museum in the base. You can go and tour the bull ring, and there's a museum in the basement, and you can like the whole history of, different bullfights and famous bullfighters. And, several died, families that generational had bullfighters. So interesting. Loved it. And there's so much history in Europe because, America was developed after Europe. And so, years and years and years of history there that are so interesting. We also went to Alhambra. OMG, Alhambra. I guess what you'd call a castle. I don't know. Built, before plumbing, before electricity, and the way they set it up with the water and the aqueducts, it's pretty incredible. It's totally worth. We took a bus from where we were staying. We were staying in Marbella, and I think it was a couple-hour bus ride, but you can arrange those, and it's nice. They speak, different people get on, and they'll narrate, or the guides will talk and about things you're passing and seeing or wherever you're stopping. And if there's different people with different languages, they'll repeat it in a different language. So it's nice. So you meet all these people, and they all speak different languages. So anyways, yeah, we also on that trip went to Africa. I went to Africa because you can take fast. It's not an airboat, but it's some kind of speedboat. And you can take it and get to Morocco in 45 minutes from the south of Spain. So we went to Morocco. We just spent a day there and rode a camel, went to a rug store. They have beautiful rugs there. Had a really fun time. Very interesting to go there. So I can say I went to Africa. I guess I went to that continent. I do want to go back and do a safari. So I have not done a safari. Yeah. So these are some of the adventures that I loved. I went swimming with dolphins in Cabo. That was a big bucket list thing of mine. A dolphin. That was super fun. This is I love animals, and that was just, I wished I had more time and I could have done more. It was like kind of pool. So it wasn't, I recently saw something on TV where they have this experience swimming with dolphins with veterans, and it's for PTSD. And oh my gosh, their experience looked amazing. They were out in the water, the ocean, the river, or whatever it was. I'm not a river. Dolphins don't go in rivers, but yeah, they were having a we of a time. One had two of them, and he was holding their fins, and they were swimming through the the ocean with them. I was like, that is the kind of dolphin experience I want to go on next. Yeah. And so we also, another fun thing we did was we went dog sledding. So yeah, we went dog sledding in Aspen. And again, this was my friend who speaks 6 languages, his girlfriend. She was a real adventurer, and she loved to find these different things to do. She's the one that found the walking trip through Tuscany. And yeah, so we went on this dog sled adventure, and it was for her birthday actually. And it was, oh my gosh, such a great experience. Now the dog sled itself was a very short, I don't know, maybe a mile or something. So we didn't go along. It wasn't like a whole day or anything like that. But my husband, now Mike, and I went on the dog sled together, bundled up, in under furs. And I remember I had a really cute guide. And so it's the experience is you go on a dog sled ride and then you go into this cabin, which has like 5-star food meals. And you could do it, you could arrange it so it could be a lunch or it could be a dinner. And so what we did is we decided to do a lunch. And so we did I think we ate and then we did the dog sled ride. But you can do the dog sled ride and then dinner. I loved it so much because it was a whole facility where, the operation was, they had these dogs and they raised the dogs, and the dogs were, a lot of them were mixed, like mixed with husky or mixed with the husky, like, in terms of physicality. And it was so great because it was like, if you looked outside, all you could see was dog houses and the dogs. And they, after we ate, they had a litter that was like 8 months old. So they take the puppies through training, right? For like, they can't pull a sled until they're adults, right? So they let them run around the property. And so we came outside and the guy was like, oh, here's a litter of puppies. And they come bounding, running towards me. And so with like licking and happy and excited. And yeah, so I liked it because it was a facility that was, it was a great place. They either raised them themselves or they would get like throwaways, they would rescue dogs. So it was a great place that had a lot of care for animals and weren't just, being mean to them to run their business. So I loved that. So yeah. So what was something I'm missing? Oh, so my husband played rugby. And so it was really fun because when I met him back in 2006, one of the first things he said to me after we started dating, and we had dated in college, so we knew each other. And it's pretty much really soon after we started dating, we knew we were going to be together forever. So he started pressuring me to go on a trip to France, but it was going to be like a year later. But the Rugby World Cup, which happens every 4 years, and rugby is a big thing over in Europe. And a lot of his friends from rugby are from Europe, and they've come to America for opportunities and they stayed here. But of course, they love the European rugby. And in fact, it's not called football. That's soccer. For a second, I was like, it's called football. No, that's soccer. But rugby, and now, of course, it's an Olympic sport. I still friggin' don't understand the rules, but and it's funny too, because I have a backstory here. My high school in Northern Virginia had a rugby team, but it wasn't, nobody knew rugby really in America, too many people. And so it wasn't like we could play other high schools. So they kind of just had this, it was kind of an extracurricular activity. And so I used to go and watch the rugby games, and I loved the rugby because all the cute guys played rugby. So I wanted to go watch the cute guys play rugby. And so and the reason why I picked my college, little unknown fact, the reason I picked my college is because I think about 4 or 5 of the cute rugby players were going to that college. And so I was like, well, what college do you want to go to? I'll go to the college where there's cute guys and then there's some rugby, and I can watch them rugby, because my college did not have any football. So rugby was kind of like something we did on the weekend. So anyways, and that's how I met my husband, is that he was playing rugby. I was dating another rugby player and I met him through that. So anyways, fast forward, he's like played rugby his whole life. He was actually still playing rugby, and he just turned 50. So he was playing in an over 50 league. And so he had these 3 tournaments that we go to every year. And so and of course the World Cup every 4 years, the whole rugby gang there's a big local where he lives rugby group. And so they were planning this trip, and they were going to go stay for 2 weeks in France. And he had rented this big house in this small town. And it was kind of like positioned. So, because when rugby World Cup games are played, they're played like throughout France, so, or whatever country. So they're not always in one stadium. So they had tickets to one stadium that was like an hour east and another that was like an hour west of the town. So the town was perfectly situated in between. And that was such a great experience. Of course, we continued dating. At some point, I said, yes, I'll go. I acquiesced and we went, and it was so much fun. We also ended up and the tail end. So his best friend and wife and their daughter, we ended up staying over after the rugby thing ended. And we went to Spain, but a part of Spain I had never been to, which was the Costa Brava. Costa Brava. And that is kind of like the beachy, but it's, oh my gosh, it's almost like the upper, to me, kind of the upper Californian coast. It's like cliffy and mountainous but so lovely, the little towns. And it was so much fun doing that drive. And we didn't even know where we were staying. It was kind of like this fun 4 days of just like exploring. And it was also his best friend's birthday while we were there. And then we ended, because we were flying out of Barcelona. And the only bad thing about Barcelona is, and I was warned, but was my purse was stolen by some gypsies. So, and I'm not going to go into details of that experience, but fortunately my purse only had like, I don't know, I think it had 20 or 40 euros, which was okay. It had my driver's license, and it had my camera. Cause back in the day we didn't have iPhones. And so that was the only sad part, is that I lost a lot of film or a lot of photos that I had taken. But because we were in a group, we all were kind of taking very similar pictures. So I was able to get pictures from other people. So I, just feel so violated when that happens. Like somebody stole something from me, and my husband was so mad. And then we went on this big search, which took a lot of time and distracted us from our trip, which fortunately I had my passport in a backpack. And so lesson learned, always keep your passport in a safe place, and also make a copy of it is what I know to do. So yeah, I was very lucky because we were going to like be flying out the next day. So just had to get a new driver's license, and yeah, lost a little bit of money, but I never carry a lot of cash. So somebody who steals from me is going to be sorry. Yeah. And so that was super, super fun. And then the other trips. So we did this Aspen trip every year. So that's the reason we go to Aspen. Aspen, if you've never been, it's such a beautiful, beautiful place. And I think I talked on a previous episode about what you do when you go to Aspen is you go to the thrift stores, because you can find gold. You can find gold. I have gotten like beautiful. I have a leather Coach jacket. I have a Marc Jacobs winter coat, cream colored coat. I got a Coach purse. I mean, I learned this from one of the women, one of the rugby wives, is like, yeah, go. There's a couple of thrift stores in Aspen that I like to go to. And they do a bike thing. There's a trail that goes, and it's flat, and you can rent a bike and you can go on this beautiful bike ride, very similar to the bike ride I went on when I went on the West Virginia bike trip, with the little gurgling brook stream next to you. And when we used to go in September, because mid-September is when the rugby tournament was, and that's when the aspens are turning yellow. Oh, so nothing like the yellow scenery of a bunch of aspens. And anyways, this bike ride will take you to a restaurant. That was our destination, because we had heard about this bike trip to this Mexican restaurant. So it's kind of this little dive kind of Mexican restaurant, real cute. So you go and you would go and get your lunch, and then you'd ride back. Although the one thing I would say is I think I had a margarita or two. And, when I got back on the bike, I was like, whoa, this is a little harder than I did the first time when we were on the way here. Going back was a little bit more of a struggle. So I don't know, next time I might have a alcohol-free margarita. Yeah. So, and then the other thing too, is I remember my daughter went with some friends to Aspen. A friend of hers has a place there. And so they had a girls' weekend, and they went on that bike trail that I'm speaking of. And they passed Lance Armstrong. So he bikes out there. I know he used to, although he's kind of got a bad rap now. So, but yeah, that was kind of cool passing him. So yeah. And then what were the other big things? Oh, Lake Placid. We used to do a rugby trip in Lake Placid. He's now retired from rugby, so we don't do these things anymore. Our schedule is clear because these were commitments that we had every year. But Lake Placid is cool because that's where our Olympics were. And I think, I don't know, 82 maybe. But that's where the big famous, I think that's where the hockey, was it 82? But where it's where the hockey, the famous hockey, the Russia, we beat Russia in that ice rink there. But, and you can tour the facility there, but it's a beautiful little town. And that's where he actually proposed to me, was in Lake Placid. I had forgotten about that. One of the really great memories too, I remember, was when we went on the trip, the rugby trip. We stayed, like I said, in this small town called Uzes, Uzes, I think is the name of it. And we it was just so neat. Everybody stayed, and like they rented homes, or little, one woman stayed in, I think it had been a church, but it was renovated into a like an Airbnb. I think this was before Airbnbs were really big, but it was kind of a cool place. So we'd like go to different people's places and hang out. But I remember going to their, what the equivalent of a farmer's market is, but it was there. They would have it on Saturday, and they sold food. And I mean, if you think of French bread, right? And they sold goods. And I just loved it because when you go to these small towns, a lot of people don't speak English. When you go to the larger cities, they do, but nobody really spoke. The sellers didn't really speak English. And so you had to communicate with them as best you could. And, all French money, right? And I remember I bought a beautiful, shawl, and I love it to this day. It's high quality. And yeah, I remember buying it and communicating with her and as best I can. And, French, from what I understand and I've heard, is that they really don't like it when Americans don't try to communicate in French. And so I did my best to communicate with her in French, because I think it shows something that you're like trying to, you're there in their country. And so trying to speak their language is like, that's a courtesy, right? It's like a courtesy, instead of coming there and being kind of like a rude American where you're like, oh, why aren't you speaking my language? That's the language of the world. No, it's not. It's not to some people, just to us who live here. I always have wished I could speak multiple languages, and maybe someday I will. I did take Spanish for 4 years in school, and I know words, but people speak so fast. If I immersed myself, I know I would get it. But Spanish is a really pretty easy, from what I understand, language. English is supposed to be one of the hardest to learn, but Spanish is pretty easy to learn, and I just haven't mastered. I think the older you get, the more, I mean, when you're young, it's so much easier to learn a different language, so they say. All right. And so I have covered so many things. I am so lucky to have, I recognize how lucky I am to have been able to do these different things that have given such value in my life. I look forward to more amazing trips, like going to Greece. I am a little nervous because it is still COVID is around, but I am going to an island. It's called Amorgos, if you want to Google it. And it's an 8-hour ferry ride from Athens. But what I have read is that there has never been a COVID case on that island, and it is touted as one of the safest places in the world. And I'm staying at a 5-star hotel, and I can't wait. So when I get back, I'm going to share my experience. I'm going to talk about Tanya and her retreats, because I might even have her on the podcast again, because she does them all over the world, and she does like 3 or 4 a year. And so I'm meeting the people because she hooked us up on an app, What's Up app. And there's people from all over the world that are going. And I think there's 19 of us total. But I think only like 4 of us are Americans. So I'm really excited. People from UK, people from Croatia, people from France, all over the place. And so I'm very excited about this new experience and sharing it with you because, hey, you might want to go on one of Tanya's retreats and they're so affordable. You'd be so shocked at how affordable they are. But I know she's doing one in Bali next September, which I have my eye on. She does Portugal, Panama, Mexico, she's all over the place. So, and so I also want to encourage you to create a vision board, bucket list, whatever you want to call it. I like bucket lists to me are more like text, whereas vision boards are more pictorial. And I think pictures create that image in your head of where you want to go. And a lot of people say that when they finally experienced that vision that they had so long ago, it was so much exactly like that vision. So find a picture, Google a picture and put it on your bulletin board or desk or whatever. If like the place you want to go to most, where you want to stay. I want to go glamping in Africa. So like stay in one of those, like nice comfy bed tents. So yeah, on my bucket list, I have Australia and Africa are other places I want to go. I also want to go on a safari and I want to hang with mountain gorillas. And somebody I follow on social media just did that. I couldn't believe it. I was like, it was her vision on her vision board. It was her bucket list thing. And oh my gosh, here she was with mountain gorillas. I was like, oh my gosh, like the universe is telling me, yeah, you can do this. You can do this. It's achievable because if she can do it, you can do it. Right. And then she went on this safari and like just shared her experience on social media. So it was very, very real to me. And that was really exciting. So I got even more excited about my future trips. And then this, I'm really kind of getting back out there into the travel world. I was supposed to go to a conference in Scottsdale this past weekend, but a podcasting conference. But I decided I declined. I bought the ticket before I knew about Greece. And so I converted it to a virtual ticket because I didn't want to go on a trip and be exposed to people before I went to Greece. So I'm like, all my focus is on Greece and like staying healthy and away from people who might give me some illness, COVID or something else, a cold. So I want to go out there ready to roll. And going to Florida in February, we were renting an Airbnb for a month. Well, I think it's actually 3 weeks, not a whole month, but it's my birthday month too. So we had some friends and they were like, they wanted to do it and they brought it up to us and I'm like, we'll do it. We'll do it. So we're going to go explore. It's going to be in St. Augustine. So I'm very excited about that. And then we're planning, guess what? We're planning the Rugby World Cup. Remember, we went on the Rugby World Cup trip in 2008. And it's coming, no, 2007. And it's coming back to France into 2023. It's coming. It's been in Japan. It's been in New Zealand. We didn't make those trips. At the time, it just wasn't doable with us, but we're planning. My husband's already planning the trip with his friends. So we're going back to France. We're going to stay somewhere else, but we're going back out there and I can't wait. And I think the other thing to do is to keep in mind, never to compare when you go back to a place you've been before. If you had a really great experience there, you kind of want to like recreate it, but you never can recreate things. You never can. It's impossible. So I think create new experiences, visualize new experiences. And it's been good too, because, with my experience with these annual trips, going back to the same place, we went to Aspen like 8 times. I've been to Lake Placid like several times. So every time we go, it's always like, an excitement about what's to come this time, not what happened last time. So always keep that in mind. New adventures, new people, and new experiences. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I wanted to share my abundance with travel. And I want you to, if you aren't traveling too much, especially right now, or if you haven't, you should try it. You should try it. It makes you especially not only appreciate the diversity of the world that we live in with all the different languages and all the different cultures, but it also makes you abundant with what you have. It makes you abundant that you live in America, that have been so lucky as to draw the card to live in, I think, what is the best country in the United States. So, I mean, in the best country in the world, not the best country in the United States. I think I live in the best state in the United States, in Virginia. But yeah, we do. We're very lucky to be here and to come back here when we're off gallivanting, come home. That coming home is always, I mean, I've already visualized when going to Greece, how much I'm going to love coming back and getting into my bed and getting back into my routine. But yeah, it's good to get away, but it's always good to get home. So with that, I am signing off, and I will see you on the backside of Greece. Thank you so much for tuning into the Not Your Average Lives podcast. If you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe on iTunes if you have an Apple device. You can find free resources and learn what else I have going on at the moment that might interest you on my website at notyouraveragegrandma.com. You can also find me on Instagram or Facebook at Not Your Average Grandma. If you liked this episode, it would make my heart so happy if you could leave me a 5-star rating. You can also add a review to let me know what you like about this podcast, which will help spread the word about it to others who need a little midlife inspiration. As always, be you, listen to your inner voice, and focus on reigniting that lost spark so you can start living your own, not your average life.